Hello and good day to everyone. I am Sabrina Adia binti Muhammad Sharizal with the metric number of A174208, and today I am here to present my research paper with the title of Women Wearing Revealing Clothes Are Asking for It, Men's Language and Misogyny on Twitter. So, a little bit of a background of the study. According to Oxford Learner's Dictionary, misogyny is defined as the notion of hatred towards female by a group of people. So it relates to the context of hate speech and gender-based abuse that was targeted towards a female individual, in 2017. So the act of misogyny happens all around us, including in online situations in which female users are often being attacked by misogynists just because they are being the opposite gender. So in one of the four main masculinity cultural discourse of men's language, which includes gender difference, heterosexism, dominance, and in control, we're going to highlight dominance, which identifies as masculinity with dominance of power, meaning that men are expected to orient towards being strong. Hence, we're going to look whether being masculine, which is one of the elements of men's language, are connected to misogyny or not. For the statement of the problem, ideally, misogynistic men's language is considered a norm as it is said to be one of the themes mentioned as masculinity. Hence, this issue occurred from the vocabulary that was chosen and utilized in order to spite women as a symbol of asserting dominance of masculinity. However, in reality, misogynistic men's language is a serious issue as it downgrades and discriminates the female gender and does not correlate with masculinity. Masculinity does not correlate and entirely do not represent males. Misogynists too are not entitled to comment and slur women just because they are in a different terms of gender. However, the issue of how men's language and misogyny correlate with each other is still unclear. It is important for us to acknowledge whether men's language relates to misogyny or not in the context of online harassment faced by female online users. There are two research objectives for this paper: to explore and analyze the types of misogynistic manifestations in English in Twitter, and second, to investigate the relationship between men's language and misogyny on Twitter. There are two research questions for this paper. First are, what are the types of manifestations of misogynistic phenomena against women? And second, how does men's language relate to misogyny? The significance of the study, this study helps by highlighting the gap about the research in men's language as well as misogyny in an online context. There is limited research in both men's language and also misogyny, and if they are outdated. So, theoretically, this will help people understand better about the significance of the characteristic of men's language and how serious misogyny issue is. Practically, this research can help people to overcome misogyny and avoid discrimination of women using impolite English words and context. For the literature review, we're going to look into three parts: theory on men's language, theory on misogyny, and past studies on online misogynistic harassment. So first is theory on men's language. In sociolinguistics, men's language is a topic on how men use language to express themselves, their feelings, and solidarity. The characterization of male in language is often depicted with dominance, and it can be done in few steps when conversing between genders, such as interruption when talking, which means they are showing dominance, using powerful linguistic features to portray power. For example, they exert dominance by using force, threats, or showing superior knowledge and hierarchy. And third, impoliteness, in which they use insult and vulgar and assertive words to show solidarity towards the same gender. However, it may seem negative towards the opposite gender. Kisling 2007 opinionated that a specific speech genre of overly competitive and distancing forms of insulting is often used between men to show solidarity. Second, theory on misogyny. As we reviewed just earlier, misogyny is described as a noun word that defines as the hatred of, aversion to, or prejudice against women. So examples of misogyny includes male privilege, patriarchy, gender discrimination, and sexual harassment. So misogyny can also occur in many forms, both offline and online, and in this paper on Twitter. However, the group of people who are against misogyny are called feminists. They fight for the equality and women's rights, protection of women, girls, and children from abuse and harassment. So feminists over the centuries have been fighting for their rights and go against the idea of females being the weaker gender. For the third part is past studies on online harassment. So almost everyone on the internet faced online harassment despite their genders and sexuality. But women are more likely to experience this. Women are far more likely than men to be subjected to serious forms of sexual or gender harassment in online situations. Thus, we use the taxonomy to distinguish types of misogynistic manifestations are as follows: discredit, stereotype and objectifications, sexual harassment and threats of violence, dominance, and derailing. In this paper, the type of research design that will be used is qualitative research, which is content analysis and observation to analyze and interpret the English tweets that was collected. The taxonomy of misogynistic behavior is adapted from a model of misogynistic phenomena taxonomy modeled by Anzovino, Fersini, and Rosso 2018 to explore the types of manifestations of misogynistic phenomena against women. The data will be observed and taken from Twitter and profiles in search for English tweets that contain misogynistic elements. Prior to the collecting of the data, 100 tweets containing misogynistic elements were collected for the analysis of misogynistic manifestations contents in the tweets. The data collected are then observed and sorted in the types of misogynistic manifestations. The tweets are then classified by the monitoring of the vocabulary used and the context behind the tweets that leads to misogynist. The table shown is the findings of the frequency for each of the manifestations. Now we're going to look into the types of manifestations by looking at the tweets. So first, we have derailing. Derailing brings meaning of justifying abuse, denying male responsibilities, and attempt to refocus this discussion by disrupting it. So if we look into this type of tweet, and I quote, "Stop supporting women. You can't just fight for them to have equal rights. They need to prove that they are worthy. Women's Day is so dumb. Hashtag F International Women's Day." So we can see that in this type of tweet, the tweeter is justifying abuse, and they are trying to change the topic of International Women's Day by saying that female have to prove themselves, that they have to gain for their rights. The next type is stereotype and objectification. So stereotype and objectification brings meaning of relegating women to second-class status and generalizing the gender. If we look into this tweet, the tweet said, "Simply put, women are emotionally unstable creatures. Knowing this to validate your self-worth on whether or not she's happy is committing self-sabotage. Their emotional state is ever-changing like the wind, so basing your happiness on any female is a guaranteed losing bet." From the tweet itself, we can see that the Twitter user himself, is generalizing all women to be emotionally unstable creatures. So next is discredit. So discredit brings meaning of slurring women for no reason but to offend them. If we look into this tweet, the tweeter said, "Some women are sluts." By using the word slut, which is a vulgar word, it brings meaning to offend the woman. So it is obvious that this type of tweet is classified as discredit. Furthermore, the next type of manifestation is sexual harassment and threats of violence. Sexual harassment and threats of violence brings meaning of harassing others and give physical threats. In this tweet, the Twitter user said, "I'm with your mom and she says to suck my dick to clean her shit off." using vulgar words and using context of sexual harassing others, is obvious that this tweet is classified as sexual harassment and threats of violence towards other people, especially to female gender. Finally, the type of manifestation is dominance. So dominance brings meaning of maintaining male dominance, safeguarding male interests, and keeping women out of the conversation. In this tweet, it said, "True, true, here, here. Misogyny and patriarchy is what keeps the world running." It is obvious that the user hinted that misogyny and patriarchy is how the woman revolves around us. So by maintaining male dominance and safeguarding male interests and also keeping women out of the conversation, the Twitter user portrays dominance in which they believe that misogyny and patriarchy is the way of life. Next, we're going to look into the discussion on the relation between man's language and misogyny. So observe from the data collection and connecting between the macro and also micro elements of dominance, we're able to detect the relation between man's language and also misogyny. So there are a few elements that we should look into. First is the macro element is dominance, and the micro elements are threats of violence, derailing, and discrediting. So man's language does have connection with misogyny based on how they use their language, how they utilize them. So from the micro elements such as threats of violence, derailing, and discredit, it can pile up into macro elements, which is dominance, since the three of them are under the word dominance. To conclude, it is safe to say that there is relation between man's language and misogyny. However, evidence are still scarce, so further evidence and also further research are needed to validate the evidence of the relationship between man's language and misogyny. For the types of manifestations of misogynistic phenomena, it is adapted from the list of manifestations of misogynistic phenomena by Enzovino et al. 2018. For this research, it is expected that this research will help the public to understand better about this issue and also help the public to overcome misogyny, especially in online contexts. That is all from me, Sabrina, Adia. Thank you so much.